Welcome on the news review belt of the AM show. Thank you for staying with us. We're joined by National Best Teacher Stella Jima Labi. She is our guest. Stella, I see you there. Good morning and Happy New Year. You would have to unmute, Stella.
Yeah, I've just done that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me too?
Okay, the sound is really low. I'm struggling to hear Stella, so we'll work out the technical details. We'll iron out any issues there are. Hello, Stella. Let's try this one more time. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me too?
Yes. Okay. I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Thank you so much for joining us. Last year you were here. We were talking about education, and you had been crowned National Best Teacher. I'm sure you're still basking in that glow. But let's start from 2022. How would you describe that year in terms of the economic landscape, in terms of your pocket? I know some good things happened apart from the National Best Teacher Award. But in a nutshell, how would you describe the year 2022?
So the year 2022 comes in different ways for people. It actually came differently for people. For me, I called it a testify year. Irrespective of I called it a testify year. Irrespective of all the hardships and everything that we were going through, I called it a testify year. Because from the beginning of the year, we were all battling with everything, but along the way, I say God came through for me. Yes.
So it's been a year of testimony for you, and obviously for all of us.
Yeah.
I heard rapper Sarkodie, for example, when my colleague Maxwell Agbagba interacted with him. When he was talking about the year, he said it had been a tough one, but he was all good because guess what? He had life. And that's one thing that we've all been blessed with. I'm Catholic, for example, and the Holy Father who had retired, the first in about 6 centuries, Pope Benedict XVI, he saw Christmas, but he didn't see the new year. So there are so many little blessings we take for granted, and that's an interesting point you make there. At least we should be grateful for those little ones. Well, having reflected on 2022, I would then shoot the question to you before we get to the news portals. What would be your resolutions for this year? Do you have any?
Okay, so I don't make resolutions every year.
Okay.
I do what I call progressive resolution.
Oh, wow.
So, yes. So I call it progressive resolution. The resolutions that I got down some years ago, I review them. If there are gaps, if there are some of the resolutions that I couldn't achieve, then I carry it forward. And so it's like a 5-year plan, 5-year resolution, and then I work on it progressively.
I see. So when did you last make a resolution, and how far along have you come?
I think the last time I made it was in 2018. And then this year, what I've done, I did that actually yesterday, was to pick a pen and a paper and review all the ones that I've achieved, and then all the ones that still needs to be worked on. And so that's what I'm doing now.
I see. That's interesting because when it comes to resolutions, a few years ago, I decided too that I wouldn't be making them every year, just following through. I mean, we all have some basics we want to work on every year. Those set aside. Sometimes we say we want to do X, Y, Z. I think I'm somewhere in the middle between God's planning and my own planning and just putting in my best with everything I do. That is my policy. It's either I am doing it 100% or I am not doing it at all. And that is basically it. I feel that if I do it that way, it resonates, it reverberates through everything in the course of the year. You don't necessarily need to. Because I feel sometimes psychologically, people say, okay, so the house I am constructing, I want to get to maybe 70% by end of year. Then maybe like 2022, many factors come in. You've not even got to 15%. Now you're psychologically, you're not in the best of places. I think sometimes not being realistic is also part of why we feel like failures and all of that. So I have psyched up my mind, and I always remember that proverb. Man plans, God laughs.
But God executes.
But at the same time, you cannot just go without a plan. So plan, yes.
Of course.
But ensure that you understand that not everything may go according to plan. You must be malleable, and that's very important. But speaking of which, so we heard about, we know of the ban on predictions. Let's go to myjoyonline.com. We know about the ban on predictions and all of that. In fact, we heard the IGP this morning at Lovin in Shirai FM talking about some of these developments. But we also heard of Owusu Bempa predicting death,
a lot of marriages,
civil war, and coups in 2023.
Yeah.
And another counterpart of his, Nigel Gazy, also saying that the IGP for the Republic of Yempeno-Kware will be changed and Kwame Dramani will sit at the Jubilee House. It appears they are finding innovative ways of still prophesying. You remember the last time, what name did Nigel Gazy? Maybe my technical team will help me. Umwofia. Aha. Umwofia. What is your take on all of these?
Okay. So I know even from old, we got prophets prophesying in the good book, and they all. Now, all these prophecies that we saw in the past, we saw that they were in line with God's plan. Now, the problem here is that we cannot really testify whether all these prophecies that we are coming out with are from God or they are from them as individuals. But one thing is for sure, that God speaks in various ways. And one amazing thing is when we get these prophets trying to coin names for Ghana. So you hear a name like the Yempeno-Kware. And the Yempeno-Kware is literally associated to Ghana, right?
I mean, it is tree that he's using. So hello, Stella.
All these prophecies. Hello, I can hear you.
Yes, go ahead.
All these prophecies are amazing to hear. But in the long run, we are all believing that the will of God will be done. And these prophecies, we have, the Bible also says that God reveals. But in his revelation, there are strategies to redeem.
It's an interesting point, and I'd just like you to focus on this. Don't you find it curious that a lot of the time these prophecies only come at the end of the year, when the year is wrapping up and it's the last month and it's Christmas and it's 31st watch night, and maybe crowds are being, the attention of crowds is being sought. Do you look at that side as well?
Of course. So it's a question that I'm sure a lot of people are actually battling with and looking for answers. So why is it that in March we don't get any prophecy? Maybe the first quarter, the first half, but only on the 31st of December. Is it that God only speaks around that time? So it's something to look at. Do God only speak on 31st December? So it's quite baffling to know why the prophecies come along that line. I think it's something that we all have to look into, why they shelve and wait till 31st December before they bring all those prophecies.
Right, why they wait till or close to 31st December. But let no one mistake it. I know people, for example, who are very gifted and they prophesy and it happens. They are not the types who would say, oh, yes, of course, everything God reveals to redeem. And, you would notice another trend. They would usually say, this will happen, but if we pray. So if it happens, I said it. If it doesn't happen, they prayed against it.
We prayed.
It's pretty tricky. I was just on the 31st, the reading that was taken in church had to do with Elisha. And when, some of the neighboring nations wanted to attack Samaria, Israel to be specific, and how they had actually come to him because they realized that everything their king planned, there was a prophet in Israel who would reveal it. So they came to attack them. But guess what? The prophet had seen it, and he said to his servant who was distraught when the city was surrounded, look, those who are for us are many more than those who are against us. And then he asked for God to open his eyes, and he saw the angels and the chariots. Eventually they were led into the town, blinded upon request of the prophet. I mean, these are things that happened and things that, we can still go back to and reflect on. But sometimes I ask myself, when these pastors make these allusions or projections, is it really God? Like I was saying, I know people who prophesy, people personally I know who prophesy to me, who prophesy to other people, and it happens exactly. So I believe in prophecy. But for some of these ones, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I don't mince words. Some of them are charlatans. Let's just put it that way. Some of them are frauds. The question is, how do we rid our system of the chaff and leave the wheat? It's a spiritual matter. So I want to draw your attention to this. In Rwanda, it's been going on for years. Churches and mosques were closed down due to disciplinary issues. I'm talking about 700 plus of them. Why? There was a new clerical requirement that, for example, to head a church, to be pastor, to do this, to do that, to build a church, you had to have a university degree. And the purpose was to bring order, some sanity among churches. What do you think? Is it high time we got to that point? Because look, you build your house somewhere and someone is going around the community with a megaphone disturbing your sleep. It's good, preach the word of God. But sometimes on campus, I remember the University of Ghana, you're a student, you study deep into the night, you want to get some rest. Someone comes right behind your window and is blasting away. You're not the Antichrist, but you need some sleep. So I don't know. How do you think we can sanitize, the system?
Okay. So I don't think we can start going in the way of Rwanda, where you will need a university degree before you can pastor a church. Because there are several men of God who has never been to the university. However, they are able to study the word and they are able to share the gospel, okay? In our area of sanity, I think I love the IGP's line, okay? I'm sure you can see that since he started last year and this year, the prophecy has come down. The mode of communication of the prophecy has also been restructured. And so you cannot just come out and say anything that you claim you've been told by God, right? And so in our area of sanity, I think there should be a lot of trainings for the pastors. So we can have a lot of trainings for the pastors. We can have, so with the trainings, we can have retreats where they take them through a lot of, I think some of them need psychological treatment, because the kind of prophecies that they bring out sometimes is quite questionable. So our sanity, the way we can sanitize our space, is what has already been started by the IGP. And the other thing that I think can also be done is retreats, constant retreats for the pastors to help them pray more, to help them understand that before you bring out any prophecy, before you speak, it should be a clear hearing from God and not just from your instincts.
So let's look at some of the prophecies of Owusu Bempah, for example. I just want us to stay on this briefly. And sometimes I get concerned, Stella. So look at point 1. local airlines could be involved in an accident that would shock the nation. He cautioned aviation authorities to be careful. According to him, the country could witness a lot of plane crashes in the new year. Okay, we would give that to him. I mean, every year there probably is something here or there, but let's give that to him and pray against it. But look at this. Some of them, it's almost as though, and again, I am not attacking prophecy, don't get me wrong. Some of them are projections that probably the ordinary Kwame on the street, who probably has never been to school, would be able to make. He says, the world may experience another serious disease like COVID. Really? This happens practically every year or two, you know, from SARS to all the SARS strains of viruses to cerebrospinal meningitis and Ebola. And every year there's something, okay? Then he says a prominent tree in the forest was chopped off by a catalyst and the trees were wailing. The trees were Ghanaians and the chopped tree a prominent person. Practically every year, a prominent person will pass. In fact, last year, years back, we had former President Rawlings. Just last year, we had Professor Kwesi Botwe as well go, among a string of other personalities. Then he talks about a prominent person from the Christian fraternity may also lose his life. He called for prayers from the fraternity to avert the calamity. Whom? I mean, do you get it? It's so abstract. And these are things that will happen anyway. These are things that, like it or not, a prominent person in the Christian community, everyone could surmise that. What is interesting though, point 10, he warns of a possible coup in the country. He called on the presidency, the national security, and other state agencies to be on alert to avert the overthrow of government. I find that interesting because already last year, there had been some insinuation that maybe some members of the executive had to speak to the military, and that even before this, you remember the issue to do with, I've forgotten his name, the police officer who was supposed to be allegedly, together with a medical doctor, involved in coup plots and all of that. So this again is nothing new. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying, but the point is, some of these things are so commonplace. It's nothing extraordinary. It's something that anybody could surmise, project. You know?
Yeah. I feel that I was just looking at the issue of the airline and then coming down to most of the things that he outlined. Now, these airline issues, there's an airline, a local airline in Ghana that I'll not mention the name. But the first time I made a mistake of sitting in that airline, I thought that was the end.
Really?
It was just like cho-cho in a pothole. That was terrible. And so you can actually predict that there are issues with some of the airlines that needs to be worked on.
Right. So even making a projection on that is a bit, commonplace, because some of these things, I get the point you're making. Some of the conditions of these aircraft are problematic. The local aircraft shuttling here and there. So if something happens, you don't go. But anyway, I mean, we can give them their props. Just to wrap the conversation, though, on that beat, it's interesting that some of the points are actually made. When you look at point 15, he says finances will be tough, but those faithful to God will have it easy. As though this had never been the case. It is always the case. Point 16, I couldn't help myself when I looked at that one. There will be a lot of marriages. Really?
Yeah.
No, really?
So the single ones should get ready, they'll be married.
Okay. And finally, he says, God has sent a white cloud of blessings to Ghana, but some malicious spirits are trying to block it. Again, who doesn't know that God blesses and the devil is always trying to rob us of those blessings? But I just wanted to get us thinking about some of these predictions that have been made. Let's talk a bit about corruption. In that last installment of News File for the year 2022, the speaker series, we heard a number of prominent people speak. The CEO of DTI, and I loved what she said about our thinking and how we're often, even as children, we stymie the creativity of children. Yet we want them to go toe-to-toe with those in the West and other places that are allowed to explore, to grow, to speak, to express their minds. And I can say that I am who I am because I had a background that allowed me to express myself. But anyway, let's look at the other side. Another person who spoke was Kisia Jabing, the special prosecutor. And he said, I have not seen much commitment from government in fighting corruption. In fact, he has not, according to him, speaking on Newsfile, like I said, he said that had to be changed in order for the country to make meaningful inroads in the fight against corruption. And quoting him, he says, on the part of the government, is the government ready for the fight against corruption? From where I sit, I have not seen much. I have not seen much commitment. I have heard lip service on too many occasions paid to the fight against corruption. We lose over $4 billion every year when it comes to corruption. And guess what? We're going to the IMF for a bailout for $3 billion. Even if we were able to shave off, 75% of the corruption or plug those loopholes, probably, who knows, wouldn't be going to the IMF. What do you think about that situation?
So I think that it actually starts from our backgrounds. This morning at dawn, I was having a discussion with my husband, and we were talking generally about the mentality of people as they grow up and as they seek further studies. So I was telling him that I would love to groom other young people who would love to go and study outside and come back with the mentality of changing the scope, okay? And not with the mentality of coming back to accrue wealth for themselves. The corruption starts from the beginning. Now, let me take the point of myself as a teacher and then in the classroom. The children are cheating in examination and people support them to cheat. The children see things going wrong and other people think that, oh, it's their time, let them enjoy, let them do it. So the foundation itself is shaky. And because the foundation is shaky, the issue of the corruption, it will take a while for us to actually drive it away.
So you agree with the special prosecutor that the mechanisms to stem the tide of corruption are not in place. And once we continue like this, corruption will also keep, staying to remain a problem.
Of course, they are not really in place. Because if you are signing, let's take it, you are signing a check, okay? And there are proper measures in place. You know that at the beginning, this is what is going out. This is what is coming in. This is what this is to be used for. And it should be used appropriately. And there are proper allocations. So I've been reading some few reforms that maybe in our subsequent discussions, not today, I will share with you. I've been reading some few reforms on education, some of the things that have been done, and the corruptible nature of things that are happening. So there is a contract given for a structure to be put in place, and the thing has been left uncompleted. Why? Because there is somebody somewhere looking and waiting to have a share of the money that has been given. And that is the corruption. And the sad part is that people are not opening up, are not ready to talk about it. You remember Martin Amidu? Right. Martin Amidu had the same challenge. He was talking about that and people tapped him. And now we get the current prosecutor also talking about the same thing. That means the canker is there, and until it's rooted from the foundation, my dear, I don't think we are going to see any change now.
Change not likely if we keep things the same way. Let's look at the story. I found it interesting. So Ghana is behaving like a mad person, mad in quotation marks, and that's according to Dr. Perby, global CEO of the HUD Group and best-selling author. This was during a presentation on the topic, Officially Broke and Certifiably Mad. in which he stressed on the folly of governments and individuals in the country. According to him, he says, the repetitive resort to the IMF classifies the country as a, quote, mad person, adding that the approach yields the same results every time. And he asks, why are we mad? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and again and expecting a different result, most famously attributed to Albert Einstein and to other individuals and groups. We've been to the IMF 17 times, okay? We're back here. And the interesting thing, I noticed that over the weekend we were sharing some of those videos. The finance minister said, we are not going to the IMF. There is no way we're going to the IMF. In fact, we're a proud nation and we have the resources and we can do this. It was re-echoed by my friend, Dr. John Kuma, the Deputy Finance Minister. Here we are with the IMF. They said there would be no haircut, according to Mr. President. Kojo Nkrumah came and gave his explanation of it. There is a haircut definitely happening. They said, individual bondholders, you're exempt. There was talk about whether some people had used confidential information and then moved their bonds to become individual bondholders. Barring all of that, we were told individual bondholders would not be a part of this. Now they are. So I don't know. When it comes to the economic structures of our country, for you as a teacher, what do you see and what would you like to see in 2023?
Economic structures. So there are no structures. I don't think there are any structures in place from where I sit. Because if there are proper structures in place in terms of economics, I don't think most of the challenges that we are facing, we would get here. So from the point that I'm coming from the angle that I sit as a teacher, as somebody who is looking at a new phase of learning, a new phase of young people who are pushing the agenda for change and transformation. There are no structures. And until we see structures, proper structures in place, I beg to differ, but we will not stop going to IMF. I was at a place, I won't mention the place, but where I found myself, no, I should mention, I was at a place recently, and on the desert, you see beautiful things rise up. And this is here, Dubai. So as part of my award, they added the promise and I was taken to Dubai.
Right.
And when I got to Dubai on our tour, I just couldn't believe that a desert can be distinguished. And this is a desert, and they have been able to plant trees.
Yes.
Now, it will amaze you how they even get water supply for the trees. And I saw holes down there. So those who are critical about some things like myself, I was curious and looking at how they were doing things. And the trees had water holes in them, and that supplies water to the trees. This is a country we are in where we have constant rainfall. And that is a country that they have rainfall twice in a year. Unless it's induced, what is wrong? What is wrong is that a lot of things are not well taken care of. A lot of things are not structured. And because a lot of things are not structured, we will keep going back. What needs to be done? Yes, what needs to be done is to have a governing policy, a policy that nobody can manipulate with, no matter the change in government. And so this is a binding principle that, let's say, we are going to use for the next 20 years. And whoever comes is to follow that principle, is to follow that, so that if there are projects in place, the projects get completed and not abandoned for new ones to start. Because as we start new projects, a lot of money goes into it. Meanwhile, one has been started and needs to be completed. Yeah, and so until we have proper structures in place, change is inevitable.
Let's do a few more local stories before we go on the international front. There are a few stories from the BBC that I'd like us to take a look at. One of them about a Ghanaian. But this one, 2023 promises to be a good one. That is according to President Akufo-Addo. And of course, we also heard the Vice President right here in Accra, Newtown, visiting a church and talking about the situation and saying that everything is going to be well and all of that. We all hope so. But the economists will tell you that, and finance people will tell you that we need to get our strategy right, else we'll be laughing on the wrong ends of our mouths. So I don't know whether this optimism is based on, like you said, anything tangible. And I find something interesting. We have the finance minister who's been quoting the Bible for God knows how long and said we wouldn't get to the IMF. We are at the doorstep of the IMF. In fact, we're hoping to be allowed to enter. We have the president who often will be quoting the Bible here and there. We all remember the battle is the Lord's. And now I've noticed a trend, and I say this respectfully. The vice president is also, wherever he goes, he's quoting the Bible a lot, and I find it curious. Yes, let's do religion, but let's also work. I don't know whether you get the point I'm making on this one. I just find it a bit curious.
I do clearly, and I think I said this earlier. Until a lot of things are restructured, because we can preach the gospel, we can do religion, we can say everything that God has said we should do. But if our attitudes are not transformed, our attitude and our conduct, if they are not transformed, then the change we seek to see and we are desiring is questionable. And so we can preach what the Bible is saying, we can talk about what Adam has said, what this person has said, so and so and so. But if proper structures are not put in place, I repeat that. There is a question mark.
There is a question mark. Let's do these two stories from the BBC. I found them very interesting, and it's from BBC News. New York approves composting of human bodies. You're a teacher. I'm sure you definitely know of compost in agriculture and all of that. Yeah. Now, a person can now have his or her body turned into soil after his or her death, which is seen as an environmentally friendly alternative to a burial or cremation. Also known as natural organic reduction, the practice sees a body decompose over several weeks after being shut in a container. In 2019, Washington was the first U.S. state to legalize it. Colorado, Oregon, Vermont, and California followed suit. Now, this makes New York the sixth American jurisdiction to allow human composting. Some would tell you that, look, we're stretching this a bit too far. Human dignity comes into play. But others will tell you, well, look at Ghana, for example. You spend so much on funerals and money that you could invest in other people's lives. What's your take on that? Hello, Stella?
I think I buy into their vision. Why do you think they are developing? In burying people, the resources that are to be used in taking care of an immortal body, a body with no life, a body that can be used for nothing. Why do we waste resources on it? And so I think I buy into that. If I have to read further to check whether it's good for the consumption after we are dead, our body decomposes and they are using it to grow things, to do a lot of things for other human beings to consume something. We have to research further to see the benefits. Is it really beneficial to the health of those who are alive? Now, is it beneficial to the economy? So we are looking at our lifestyle. Is it good for the health? So in the area of health, is it good for the economy? If it's good for the health, good for the economy, why not? It can be adopted. But until then, a proper research has to be conducted, because so far only 6 states have adopted that strategy of the composition of the human body. And so if other further studies can be done, then I think we can really confirm that, okay, it is good. Let's go for it. It will save resources. It will save the lands. It will save the cost of money that we put into all that.
Well, just to conclude our conversation this morning, also on the BBC, I found an interesting story. The Ghanaian giant reported to be the world's tallest man. We've actually had, a piece on him before. This is on BBC News Pidgin. And I'm talking about the gentleman who is known by his popular name, Awuche, which in Hausa means let's go. Yeah. He was reported to, have attained the height of 9 feet and 6 inches. But in fact, when they checked, he was 7'4", which is actually just about less than a foot or so less than the one who holds the Guinness World Record. That is Sultan Kösen, who is 40 and resides in Turkey. But at least he's still growing. Interestingly, he's still growing owing to the syndrome, gigantism, which he suffers. And we can only wish Awuche the best, because this also comes with other complications. And I know people have reached out to him. I hope more people continue to do that. That's the note on which we'll wrap. Any final words, Stella? Okay, so Awuche's condition is medical. Yes. And I don't know if something can be done to help him, because holding the record alone is not enough if you are not healthy and if you cannot live long. So my final message to our viewers this morning is that a lot of prophecies have come in. People have set their resolutions. A lot of things are going on in the economy. But at the end of the day, you are the driving force to your seats. Because whatever good thing that is going to happen to you this year, you have got a lot of role to play. And so let's all continue contributing our quota to the development of Ghana. This is where we find ourselves. This is where our costs have been cut. And so if we don't put in all our efforts to see things better, we will keep crying and we will keep lamenting about the state of Ghana. So good morning to you all, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Stella, for having joined the conversation. 2022 National Best Teacher Stella Jima Labi was our guest for the News Review. Just to chip in that for Awuche, every time he goes to hospital, he needs about $50, the equivalent of £40, because we don't have some of the basics that our hospitals require. And Stone Boy has also become the first Ghanaian artist to reach over 100 million streams on AudioMac, and that's an interesting feat. Well, from the News Review, we settle now for some sports, and we'll take a break and bring you that. Do stay.